One part, water and sanitation services. We provide water for drinking in the rural and urban areas. The constitution of the country requires that every Ugandan has access to safe drinking water and sanitation services, and we do that through construction of water sources, through sometimes drilling boreholes, protecting springs, or pumping water from rivers and lakes and delivering that water to the people. We are also responsible for providing water for production. We construct dams, valley tanks, and ensure that people have access to this water for irrigation, for fisheries. We also provide water for hydropower. Hydropower dams actually depend on water. Water is used to run turbines, so we ensure that that water is available. We also provide water for tourism, water for industry and main activities. So there is the provision of water services. We also have a responsibility of planning for the use of the water and managing the use of the water. So we ensure that all the uses of water are planned for, so that the water doesn't get depleted, that the water is available where it is needed and when it is needed in the right quantity and quality. We do regulate the uses, we issue water permits and ensure that there is order in the way people are using the water. We also ensure that the quality of the water is good, and we also ensure that Uganda relations with other countries are maintained. Maybe the viewers may want to know that 70% of the water we have in the country actually comes from outside our borders, comes from Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo. So one of the functions we do is to work with the other countries so that we continue getting our fair share of the resource. And once this water comes to Uganda, it is this same water that goes South Sudan, Sudan, and Egypt through the Nile. So that's part of transboundary water cooperation. We are also responsible for ensuring that wetlands, forests, and riverbanks are maintained. Wetlands are stores of water, they filter the water. Trees are the ones which enable us to get rainfall, and this rainfall is the one that comes down as water in rivers, lakes, and underground. So that function of maintaining the environment, the wetlands, riverbanks, and forests is also what we do. But the ministry also is responsible for coordinating climate change actions in the country. We have a number of agencies. We have National Water and Sewage Corporation, which is operating, providing water in large towns. Now it has expanded also to smaller towns all over the country. We have a National Environment Management Authority, which coordinates all the environment issues in the country. We have the National Forest Authority, which is responsible for maintaining forests, forest reserves that the country has designated all over. Then Uganda National Meteorological Authority, which is responsible for provision of weather and climate services. So the Ministry of Water and Environment is big, with the departments within a ministry, and also the agencies that are specialized in the various areas. But we do collaboratively with local governments and with other partners. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, and thank you for that detailed introduction of what the ministry does. Mjuni, what is about that data center at Uganda National Meteorological Authority? What do you do and why you established, and how have you helped the people of Uganda?
Thank you, moderator. What I can say is that meteorological services, they are as old as colonial history. They started actually around 1896, and by that time, of course, they were the colonialists handling it, and it was mainly looking at providing climate data to aviation. Of course, after that, then it later on became a department at Uganda government in 1977, and we've been a department up to 2015 when transformed into an authority. So from 2015 to date, we've been called Uganda National Meteorological Authority, and the mandate of Uganda National Meteorological Authority is to provide weather and climate information across the country. Of course, what we do mostly is one, we make sure that we monitor weather and climate. And how do we monitor it? We've got some stations which are spread all over the country, and we make sure that these stations have the services. They have got personnel, and they monitor, they have sensors, and all these other issues. They try to monitor weather parameters. And these weather parameters are very important. They are required by the people all over the country. And of course, so many other sectors, including, of course, water and environment. My senior colleague here, Dr. Kalisto, normally talks about the water cycle. And the water cycle relates everything, how water comes from how water is formed, of course, as a result of weather processes, the evaporation, then condensation, eventually it becomes water, then percolation, infiltration, and the cycle continues like that. So one of the cardinal points is to provide this data. And of course, the way we calibrate our stations, the automatic weather stations nowadays produce data at 15-minute interval. So that means now in a day you've got a lot of data, and of course in a month and a year you find you've got a lot of data. This kind of data needs to be managed, because at the end of the day, all of us, we shall depend on this data for analysis to see the catchment area, how much water is required in an area. For greening the country, of course, we need to know for sure will this rainfall be enough to support the greening process, the plant growth, and so on, and so on. Therefore, that is one role. Another role, of course, we provide aviation services. We provide weather information to aviation services. Of course, these aircrafts take off, land, and of course en route, they depend on this weather. And therefore, before they take off, they must get this weather folder, such that they are able to know where could be the turbulences, and if possible, they can try really to avoid them in one way or the other, or be prepared to face them. Then we also provide marine forecasts, especially to our transporters and fishermen around Lake Victoria, to make sure that at least when they are transporting or carrying out fishing, then they know the kind of weather they are supposed to expect. We also provide advisories to farmers. Of course, they get to know really how the forecast will be, and then it will help in planning and decision making, not only at national level, but also at the household level, so that they can know really which activity can they be engaged in. So all in all, what I can say is that weather and climate is a cross-cutting issue. And of course, issues of weather and climate are issues that deal with sustainable development. Of course, we've been with weather, we are having weather, and where we are going, we shall be having weather. And the issue is, what kind of weather shall we be having? And of course, as I talk now, we also have what we call, in addition to water and the forestry day, we've got World Meteorological Day. And when you look at the theme for World Meteorological Day, it talks about early warning and early action, and the hydrometeorological and climate information for disaster risk reduction. So we provide early warning information to make sure that all other sectors pick it from there, and then they can look at the implication of those forecasts, and if possible, they can provide advisories to different sectors. We work closely with all sectors, including the Ministry of Water, of course, which is our parent ministry, Office of the Prime Minister, especially disaster risk reduction, because when you look at the disasters here in Uganda, most of them are weather related, and therefore you realize that if we really want to make serious improvements, then we must make sure that at least they have early warning information. And of course, when you have early warning information, it would be important that you take early action. One important thing is that our products are perishable, and therefore, whenever they are available, somebody has to take action. That's why they are called early warning information. When you have it, take action immediately, because that's when you can save things. I beg to submit. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And Mr. Jipri, what is about Green Campaign Uganda?
Greening Uganda campaign. This is a voluntary program or a voluntary movement that was initiated in 2013 with an intention of involving local communities, local people, preparing the increasing Uganda's population on how they can sustainably live with the environment. This Greening Uganda campaign is largely sponsored by Million Trees International Organization. This is also a Ugandan-born organization with the support from other international organizations like Society for Ecological Restoration. We operate with UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. In support from other government agencies like NFA, like NEMA, as well as the mother ministry or the mother agency, that is the Ministry of Water and Environment. Purposely, with an intention of growing or recovering Uganda's forest recover by growing 1 million trees per constituency by 2034. This is done, it is being done with local communities under the move of one constituency, 1 million tree program, which was launched still in 2015, starting from Uganda. We continue, since you cannot grow trees in a land which is polluted with plastics and cavera. We came up with plastic recycling. We collect plastics, we recycle them into roofing tiles, into pavers. We get out flakes which are exported internationally for reusing, with an intention of clearing soil aeration, such that our trees, our indigenous trees, can deeply survive in soils, as well as combating other abnormal impacts of plastic cavera pollution. We continue, since having discovered the challenge why we had got a negative pressure on Uganda's forest recover. We found out Uganda's population was largely increasing, and people of Uganda, they had developed that negativity that how can you find a forest occupying acres of land, yet our people have nowhere to sleep, have nowhere to establish what we call urbanization. So here we brought what we call sensitization or climate education, with an intention of preparing these communities how they can live with indigenous trees, purposely, medically, as well as conserving them for various purposes. Here, we came up with a program of donating short-term plants like guava, mango, carrots, in the way of preparing Ugandans for food security. Since communities wouldn't survive without food and wouldn't embrace our campaign or our movements without direct or short-term profits, with an intention that if one owns more than 20 mangoes in his or her land, it is an added advantage in a district that we may have a positive change as well as that positive mindset. I can give you an example that today the Uganda's fertility rate stands at 5.9 approximately. This is so challenging that every woman in Uganda stands in possession of bearing or holding 6 children, it is a negative, positive, like situation we are living in. Giving a back is good, but we have not prepared communities how to live with these children. And as far as today's theme is concerned, with this population increasing, when we are not prepared for it, it may be harm to the structure, the security structure of this country. I can give you an example, areas of, let's say, like Ntoroko, where I left yesterday. The place is dry. It is the least populated section in this country. The people who are living there are bona fide of that area. They are they are people who are born from there. But unfortunately, they are like refugees. They don't have food. They don't have water because of abnormal climate changes that are happening. When you visit areas like Nakasongola, areas of West Nile, with refugees coming in, we have discovered that now to get that short-term profits or income, they have resorted to what we call deforestation. They are clearing all forests. They are clearing every tree that is existing to get some charcoal, basically to buy to get money out of it. Now we couldn't keep seated when all these are happening in the country. As volunteers, as environmentalists of various professions, we came up with these movements to sensitize communities, to actively involve them, as well as practical implementation of government environmental structures. I do submit.
Thank you so much, Dr. Uganda campaign. We are talking about water and environment for peace and socio-economic transformation of Uganda as we prepare to celebrate International Water Day on 22nd March, which I believe is Tuesday, and World Meteorological Day, which is going to be the next day on 23rd March, which is Wednesday. A reason to why you have got these experts to discuss water and environment and meteorology. In the studios, as I stated, we have Dr. Kalist Tindmugaya, who is the Commissioner of Water and Resources Planning and Regulation, Godfrey Mjuni, Manager Data Center at Uganda National Meteorological Authority, and Ambassador Jipril Owomucha, Chairman, Greening Uganda. Starting with you, Commissioner. Water, they say water is life. And you're responsible for that life. What are those strategies that you've put in place as the ministry to extend such services of water to the people of Uganda?
Thank you very much, moderator. Yes, water is life, but also water can actually kill life, can destroy life. So what we do, we try to make sure that indeed water provides life and water doesn't actually destroy life. And how do we do this? We recognize that water is a resource that we depend on as a country for different uses. We depend on water for drinking. We cannot survive without this water for drinking. We can't actually stay on this earth if we don't drink the water. About 70% of our body is actually made up of water. So water is very, very important for human survival. But also we depend on water for bathing. Again, if you spend even a day without bathing, you know what would happen to you. Of course, we depend on water for washing, for cooking our food, for growing the crops. Many of us take mineral water. Those who take beer, 95% of beer is water. Those who take soda, 96% of soda is water. It's actually colored water that we pay for. So water is important also for running the turbines. We depend on hydropower as a country. If there is no water to run the turbines, we will not have power. Oftentimes when you hear that there is road shading, behind the scenes, could actually be water that is not available. In some areas, the water is available in the rainy season. In the dry season, in some areas, you find that the water is not available and hydropower generation is not being done. But water also maintains our fisheries. Fish doesn't grow on land, fish lives on water. Again, without water, we cannot talk about fisheries. So there are many, many uses, of course, even in navigation. So water is that important. So when we talk about water being life, we shouldn't just look at it for drinking. We need to look at water broadly in all the services that it provides. And of course, what do we do to ensure that this water provides life? We deliver it to the people from where it is to where it is needed. In many parts of the country, people are depending on boreholes. So we drill boreholes, pump this water. Traditionally, we have been using hand pumps, but we have now started changing to pumping water using solar pumps so that we can actually bring water closer to the people. That's number one. But also in big towns, we cannot depend on that water from boreholes because it may not be enough to meet the needs of the town. We pump water from lakes and rivers, we treat that water and deliver it to the people. For example, within Kampala right now we are getting water from Mugaba, we are getting water from Katosi, and we are delivering it through national water to the rest of the city. But of course, again, we construct dams and valley tanks so that we can harvest rainwater and make it available when we need it. But water is part of the environment. We need to make sure that the sources of water are maintained. That's why we are talking about water and environment. That's why for us, from the water side, we are concerned about restoration of wetlands. Wetlands store water, they clean the water. We are concerned about tree planting. When Ambassador talks about tree planting, it's not just about trees, it's more than trees, it's also about water. As my colleague Mujuni mentioned, we depend on this water because it keeps saturating in the water cycle. The trees will release water through evapotranspiration. This water goes into the atmosphere to form clouds, and then the clouds will condense and the water comes down in the surface. Some of this water will run on the surface in the form of rivers and ends up in lakes. Some of it will go underground, which forms underground water. So we have to maintain the water cycle. We protect the catchments areas that generate the water. We ensure that they are well vegetated. We ensure that the wetlands are well restored. We also harvest water on the land. That's why in many parts of the country we are constructing what we call soil and water harvesting structures so that the water can go underground and form soil moisture and enable us to grow. So basically what we are doing is holistic, and we don't just do it alone as Ministry of Water and Environment. And that's why, for example, Greening Uganda program is part of what we are doing. We cannot do it as government alone. We work with the various stakeholders. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and thank you so much for such strategies. And but people still confuse the Ministry of Water and Environment with the National Water and Sewerage Corporation. Would you help Ugandans to draw a line between you and National Water?
Thank you very much, moderator. Indeed, it's always a problem. Ministry of Water and Environment is the father to national water. Of course, people confuse the son and they assume that the father is actually a son. So the son, and let me maybe highlight why that is the case. The Ministry of Water and Environment develops water supply systems. Now, for whatever we do it as a social service. Now, when we develop water supply systems, we want them to be operated and maintained in a commercial way so that they can continue generating revenue. For example, at the ministry, whatever we do, we get resources from government and our partners, and we put in place water supply system. For example, if a town is starting, small towns are starting up, the Ministry of Water and Environment goes in and develops water supply and sanitation systems. Once people are connected and they start generating money, we hand over those towns to National Water and Sewerage Corporation to operate. But those towns actually are developed by the Ministry of Water and Environment. We recently also we created what we call umbrella organizations of water and sanitation, which are running smaller systems all over the country. So we develop as the Ministry of Water and Environment and hand over the operation and maintenance of those systems to either National Water and umbrella organizations. So when you go all over the country, you will see national water, and you might actually think that the ministry is not existing. But the ministry is the father, but the son is given the responsibility of providing, maintaining those systems. So every person will receive a water bill from national water. You will not receive a water bill from the ministry. And that's why many people get to know about national water and not the ministry. Not because the ministry is not working, not because the national water is doing more than the ministry, it's just because national water is the one they interface with. But recently we also agreed that maybe to make that issue clearer, all the systems that are going to be operated by national water, which the ministry hands over, they will also always have the Ministry of Water and Environment highlighted, so that people can know that the ministry and national water are one and the same. And through that, then maybe people will not think that these are two different institutions, the same institution. One is the father, another one the son, and the son is given a responsibility, but on behalf of the father. I hope I've made it clear. Thank you
so much. Thank you so very much. Mujone,
Yes, please.
why is it that our weather has been changing more often? Something we never had before. It is changing to the worst than the better.
Thank you, moderator. Of course, Uganda has enjoyed good weather for some time. And of course, during the 60s, the 70s, people were enjoying good weather. But after some time, this weather has somehow changed. And of course, the changing has been attributed to so many factors. Of course, among them, they could be local or internally generated. For instance, when we talk about the deforestation or the degradation of wetlands, all of those, they contribute to the evapotranspiration we are talking about in the water cycle. And therefore, most of these forests, for instance, if you live near Mabira or Kalinju or some other forests, they have some kind of what we call microclimate. They have a local effect, and the areas around that place, they normally receive kind of rainfall. But of course, when they are degraded, then that means now rainfall will have some impact. Rather, rainfall will be reduced in one way or the other. Of course, another point is about the greenhouse gases. Of course, with development, most of these industries and the other processes we use, they generate or they emit greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And whenever these ones reach in the atmosphere, they somehow change the composition of the components of the atmosphere. And in so doing, they will have impact on our weather. For instance, when there is a lot of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, they somehow form what we call a blanket. It's like when you are very cold, when you put on a blanket, you somehow feel warm. But when you add an extra one, you feel warmer. And you add the third one, probably it will be the warmest. And that's how the concentration of greenhouse gases are in the atmosphere. When they were little, of course the effect was very little. But of course over time, they have increased. And of course, that's why they have, of course, come up with so many changes in our weather and climate. But I must say that it is true we've been having some of the disasters over time. For instance, like floods have been there even since the time of Noah in the Bible. The floods are mentioned and so on. Droughts have been there. They are also mentioned in the Bible. But the issue is, over time, the frequency and the severity of these extremes has increased. And therefore, we are wondering if it continues like this, then what we call sustainable development might be quite difficult to achieve. Because when you look at weather impacts on each and everything. For instance, in this studio, we've got weather. Only that this weather is controlled with AC. But this AC also depends on the outside weather. How is that outside weather? Because it can easily impact on this. So that's why we are saying that it is important to monitor this weather. In fact, our role in climate change is about monitoring, detection, and attribution. We've been carrying out some analysis over time. We've realized that in terms of temperature, Western Uganda is warming faster than other regions of the country. They are equally warming, but the warming in Western Uganda is becoming a bit serious. So that's why we say weather and climate, really they are serious issues. We should really look at it. And we normally say that in a changing climate, it is important to use weather and climate as form of adaptation. Because for a farmer deep in Bundubujo, deep in Ntoroko, like Omich has been saying, is interested in knowing the weather so that he can plan really for day-to-day activities. For instance, if it is a seasonal forecast, he would want to know what kind of enterprises can he be engaged in to be able really to produce. Because when you look at food production in Uganda, for instance, it is rain dependent. When rains are good, we expect a bumper harvest. The president has always alluded to this, that we were able to pass through COVID because we had enough food that would really support us. Otherwise, if there was no food, and then people were not allowed really to move around and do some other activities, it would have been very difficult. So in achieving this, of course, when weather changes, it is also important to monitor it. When did it start changing? That's why we normally look at monitoring and detection. For instance, here in Kampala, over time, temperatures have been increasing. And of course, even night temperatures are also increasing. Of course, when we are looking at temperatures, we look at the extremes. We look at the maximum temperature, maybe we can say day temperature, and also the minimum temperature or night temperature. There is what we normally call comfortability index, when somebody is okay, has no problem because the weather is conducive for him. But again, if it is very hot, then that comfort somehow reduces. In fact, quite often, sometimes at night here in Kampala, the temperatures are quite hot, and you hear people saying, really, we are not comfortable at all. Sleeping becomes a problem. And therefore, that's why we need to monitor this weather and then come up with data, and then we're able now to assess that when did it start and what can we do. Of course, by doing this, then we're able now to get where the problem started, and then we move on. And that's why we put up stations across the country and we see what is happening. For instance, in Kabale, we used to record like 5 degrees over time.
Okay.
But recently, they have been consistent. On average, on minimum temperature, we record 12 degrees Celsius. Maybe it ranges from 10 to 12.
All right.
So the lower level, it is very difficult really to record that kind of 5 degrees. So that means now that could be also a climate change marker that something is somehow changing.
All right.
So as I conclude, maybe it is important to make sure that you look at the whole entire value chain of the climate service.
Okay.
You install stations, so what? The stations are meant to produce data. So when you get the data, so what? You need a way to process it, analyze it, and come up with products. And of course, you need to tailor these products to different sectors. For instance, if he's an agriculturist, he's interested in knowing how much rainfall will be there for my crop like maize and so on.
All right.
And then after that, you need to package it and make sure that this information eventually reaches the intended users. Because it is one thing to have early warning information, but it is also another thing to utilize this information. And therefore, you need to make sure that you have it. And maybe one important thing is that you also need to know the feedback about this product. Because you are trying to serve a client, it is like a business model, then you are interested in knowing how the client feels about your product.
All right.
Because that would be quite important. And then you are able now to complete that kind of communication.
Thank
I
you.
submit. Thank you.
Most welcome, Jibril. Are you contented and happy with what the Ministry of Water and Environment is doing and its agencies, NEMA, National Water and Sewerage Corporation, the Meteorological Center, as someone who has been campaigning for environment protection?
Well, we have to first appreciate what is existing as we request or advise on how to implement or to have a few changes. I can give you an example that recently we actively participated in the review of Uganda's forestry policy 2020-01, which is ongoing, and our point of interest was all about revising a few sectors if Uganda is to sustainably have an increment in its Uganda's forestry cover. You see, now we have the deforestation rate in the country is far, far beyond compared to the restoration rate countrywide. With various activities, charcoal burning, land extension for urbanization, with a few government policies which are not favorable to us as volunteers, would wish that they could change. For example, I remember some time in Parliament, members of Parliament resolving to have part of Guru Central Forest Reserve degazetted for the extension of Guru University. You get? This is like, these are some of the policies that we try to say that no, this is not right, let's have it implemented this way. If you see, we are looking forward requesting government if we can have the environmental laws not only limited to government agencies, which may be busy sometimes, let's have other agencies involved. For example, you see the disadvantage we have right now, Uganda, we are losing land. We no longer have land. And basically the private farmers, they own some parts of land. But at the country, we are reaching a stage that we no longer have land for expansion with this rate of highly increasing population. So we say now, how do you see if we start using the road reserves? Like if we can own more than 500 tree seedlings from Nyakashita up to Fort Portal Road, that road of 502 kilometers, and we own some trees. These trees will be sustainably protected, and they will be adding a positive impact as far as the evaporation cycle is concerned. We come up and say, how do you see if we have some of the responsibilities channeled to local communities? Because these people are the first culprits, the local communities. You visit the district forest service team, you find they are the person in touch with the local farmers, but at the same time, you find the charcoal burning, licensing programs are ongoing. So we say, how do you see if we get some efforts channeled and empowering these local communities, the local CBOs who are coming up basically to add a positive impact as far as restoration is concerned. Now, for example, when you visit areas like Kabare, it is highly populated, and again it is hilly. We reached an extent that people were lacking what to eat, lacking land for extending their farming, livestock, and other purposes. We have trees that are already existing, and some of them are exiting from the country. Trees like Caliandria in Sri Lanka. These trees were supplied to people of Kabare, and they grew them basically for beekeeping, fodder, as well as nitrogen fixing in the soil. Such a tree species, Kabare is now known among the districts which are producing honey. You get? So if you visit areas like Nakasongola, which is very dry, areas like those of Karamoja, areas of Yumbe, we normally see women here in Kampala carrying mango. Each mango is for 2,000. But when you ask them, where do you get these mangoes from? No, we get them from the border. They are coming from Kenya. Then you start wondering, Uganda, the part of Africa, which is which we knew that it is highly fertile. How come that we are importing fruits from other countries? Therefore, we started the move of donating these mangoes to these farmers. If they can grow them and we sustainably empower them, these are efforts that we would wish that the Minister of Environment can share efforts with the Minister of Agriculture. That now, you as Minister of Agriculture, we have seen farmers, they can get some money out of these fruits. How do you see if you own them and you take up this sector, you start empowering it to local farmers? They get some money, food security, as well as green jobs. This will keep the mind of our Ugandans, adding a positive impact on climate change, as well as surviving, having sustainable means of them, keeping them themselves with resources. From there, I was talking to one of the NEMA officials. He informed him about the arrests which took place in Mbarara recently. It is this week, where a man was degrading a swamp, establishing his own activities, meaning that this person was not again prepared well. How can you sustainably live with the swamps? He was establishing sugarcane farms, as well as other trees like eucalyptus, basically with an intention of getting some money out of it. But trees like eucalyptus are known as water suckers from the soil. They will suck water, and at the end you will find that the swamp is no longer in existence. So here we are empowering the issue of climate education, that if every radio program in districts can have this an environmental talk show, basically to equip the communities with information, such that they can learn how to sustainably live with this. As far as climate education is concerned, we want an extra mind that now, how do you see if Minister of Education take up this responsibility of climate education? They go an extra mile of preparing documents, these reading books to these toddlers, that they can grow up with the climate knowledge insinuated in them. This is so challenging that you find, we have a kid at home, which is almost 3 years. He came on Valentine's Day, celebrating Valentine with the parent. But when the day for wildlife came, I was eagerly waiting to see that younger child bringing a gift to us in terms of environment. These people, they are not prepared enough, and we kindly request the Minister of Education if they can come up to take up that responsibility, such that we take the environmental department in the country as the mandate, not as the priority. Recently, we are asking the Chief Justice Wenyedoro if we can have the judicial court for environment and environmental court, basically to handle our cases. What is that we have reached a step where we have got negative pressure increasing, as well as the people who are willing to add a positive impact on environment are facing some challenges. When this happens, I can take you back to issues of areas like Bugoma, whereby Bunyoro has lived for years, getting sustainable rainfall, people getting their food. If you go there, passion fruits are existing, and they are good. But right now, when you come up without the knowledge, with your policy of clearing that forest to establish a few sectors of industrialization, yes, you will be equipping some people with jobs, but not sustainable.
All right.
When you visit areas like Busoga, let me give you an example.
As you conclude.
Yes. I can say, I'm sorry, medically, Busoga are part of malnourished groups of people, local on ground. But when they are land, they live around the river Nile, meaning the place cannot even support these our usual crops, the banana plantations, the G nuts, because the soil has been degraded. Here we find a challenge that now, what can we do? Can we sit with the Minister of Environment and see how we can work hand in hand with these people who deal in organic fertilizers, organic pesticides? That can we go back on ground and find a means on how we can gain fertility in these soils?
All right.
This will help us if we share responsibilities to achieve the sustainable means of securing the Uganda's environmental department.
All right.
Yes.
We are talking about water and environment for peace and socio-economic transformation of Uganda. And we've just heard from Dr. Callis Tin Mugaya, who is the Commissioner of Water Resources Planning and Regulation. Godfrey Mjuni is the Manager Data Center at Uganda National Meteorological Authority. And Ambassador Jibril Owamujsha is the Chairman Greening Uganda. We are taking a very short break and we pray you don't go away. After this very break, I'm going to get some callers.
Ground Zero Season 2. Stay tuned. We shall be right back. It's hot.
We passed it. We didn't know exactly what the problem was on the ground. There is no pretending about the effect of this thing. There's no pretending about it. Nobody should. It's a problem.
It's balanced.
This is not the stage at which you start planning to tax a commodity like coffee, especially from down there.
It's intellectually engaging.
The Constitution provides that the land must be registered under the customer tenure system, which is one of those that's recognized by the Constitution.
Ground Zero Season 2, live and syndicated on your public and national broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
As Uganda works towards Vision 2040, UBC Radio is dedicated to the development of Uganda. Join us every day for transformative programs in English, Swahili, and Luo. This is UBC Radio.
UBC Radio Network. UBC Radio is your national preferred choice. We broadcast all over Uganda and beyond. Join us on 98 FM in Kampala, 99.4 FM Lira, and 97.4 FM Arua. Only on UBC Radio. UBC Radio, inspiring Uganda.
That was Ground Zero Season 2, a production of Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, UBC, inspiring Uganda.
UBC Inspiring Uganda. This is UBC Ground Zero. We are broadcasting live on 98 FM, UBC Radio, and also live on clear sister radio stations, UBC Utebo, UBC Western Nile FM, and Magic One on 100 FM. We are talking about water and environment for peace and socio-economic transformation. I'm interested in knowing what the people of Uganda are saying about water. UBC? UBC?
Yes, please.
You're live and clear. This is Ground Zero.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, this is Henry Baguma.
Yes, sir.
I want to recommend that, first of all, government has done a lot of effort in fighting COVID-19. They have now introduced the Paris Agreement model. You see how much they have done in that one. So I want to suggest that issue of trees and water should equally be given similar attention at parish levels, so that every home, every house, every person has access to water, and every home has a tree. I mean, that's the only way we can fight for a better secure a better future. Thank you.
Most welcome. We thank you that you are part of Ground Zero today. UBC? Call us again on 776-511-426. This is UBC Ground Zero, and we're talking about water and environment for peace and socio-economic transformation of Uganda. Share your opinion or your idea on what you think we can handle the water and manage it. UBC?
Yes, UBC, good morning once again, alongside Mr. Juma.
All right.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you.
I have some few points I'm going to forward to you there with your cabinet.
Please.
National Watch have done to the standard. However, my challenges are always there. But to me, time for service when community they are in need of service. I'm talking about damaging of pipelines. The other rich men, they are lacking sensitization. This one mostly is attaching the community, not yet the other side of the Department of Water. You find someone bring grader to start grading a channel whereby it was not properly surveyed. You know, some we Ugandans, we are lacking really sensitization and consultation. We don't consult. Everything we think like money can finish. And damage the pipe, the water is not, other communities are not receiving water just because of one person act, bringing such that after all, even those charges come from the National Water and Sanitation Office, I will be compensating what I've made wrong. Whereby it is bad. We have to value the lives of these community people, of these villagers. Because for them, they don't have money, yes, but this service of water is in life. Now, when you bring a tractor and you graded the place, and by accidentally, your operator of the grader has caught up with by damaging the line, then people are not receiving water. And now, it's coming to monetarize. I could see vehicles of national water moving left and right, passing, even seeing water is splashing all over. But it will take long for the field personnel to adapt into the damaged point to start doing the service. So I need the National Water and Sewage Corporation to create like wherever there is this area B, there is some shortage of water there. Go and see. But sometimes they come, service delay to come back on board. So I'm trying to keep much emphasis, please, National Water. You are doing well, but I know some of these challenges are coming because of our lack of sensitization. So make sure that area. Then number 2, sewage line, splashing, crossing the road. And it goes into those running water, mix themselves down there. They meet down in the swamp area. And you know, not every home state, they have this tap water. Some they scoop water from these down areas, harbors, and they go. Some they boil it, some they don't boil it. Just immediately they take it. So let us emphasize on that also. We correct it. And dam. To me, I'm prioritizing at least let government to help us. We create more dams to separate and to help our animals from domestic use, such that dysentery, diarrhea, these other water bodies, whatever diseases, we have to be free from them. There we shall have a good move.
All right.
Then climate change. The water. I know issues of plastic, dropping of bottles, and the rest. Of recently, there were allegations about these people who are collecting scraps, and they did not identify which exactly their meaning scraps. See, these younger boys, these corridor boys, for them, whatever they know, even bottles, there are also some of the scraps formed. So they were stopped. But since they are continuing illegally, because it was not yet properly publicized, so also we have to be properly sensitized, such that we as a community, also, you have to engage with your national water officers. Please make sure you make a quick response in case of shortage of water everywhere. Yeah. Thank you very much for God and my country. Busega is listening to UBC Radio, and we appreciate your service, Amon Mutega.
For your and ideas on how best we can manage water. 776-511-426 is the number that you can reach on, and you be part of the conversation on UBC Ground Zero. We're going to be joined by the Managing Director, National Water and Sewerage Corporation later on, but I can get back to the studio and they answer your concerns. Starting with you, Dr. Kalisti.
For this opportunity, I want to thank the callers for very good comments and issues they have raised. I start with the issues raised by Henry Baguma. Yes, indeed, he has indicated that government and indeed Uganda has given priority to a number of issues such as COVID, and is requesting that issues of water and forestry should be given adequate attention at the parish level through the parish development model, and I think he's spot on. Just maybe to mention that we are already, His Excellency the President has directed, and we're already implementing, that every village should have a water source. So as a way again of ensuring that services are brought closer to the people, and we talk about a water source, it can be a borehole, it can be a spring, it can also even be rainwater harvesting. In those areas where we don't have the water, then we should be able to pump water from where it is and bring to the village. And of course, if all villages have water, then by implication, the parish will have water. But under the parish development model, we also want to make sure that the issues of water and environment are given adequate attention. And within the Water and Environment Week next week, we actually have a session on parish development model, where we want to have a discussion with the Minister of Local Government, with the Minister of Gender, and other stakeholders on how we can ensure that issues of water and environment are given adequate attention in the implementation of the parish development model. We shall also, of course, be creating tree nurseries within the parishes as a way of ensuring that there is adequate source of seedlings so that we can improve the tree cover and have people have access trees for various purposes, for building, but also, of course, in many areas we still need firewood. So I think he's spot on, and I can't agree with him more. And as a ministry, we are giving it adequate attention, and we are working with our other agencies to ensure that that is done. Now, on the issue raised by Juma, you said the Managing Director, National Water, will come on board, but just to mention, and he will supplement, that at the end of the day, and I think Juma has mentioned, we need Ugandans to have a sense of responsibility. I think awareness continues to be raised, but we need to do more. For example, what we are doing right now is also part of sensitization. We need to ensure that the communities actually take responsibility and do what is expected. And that's why for us, the Uganda Water and Environment Week has been very, very key in ensuring that we bring everybody on board. For the information of the listeners, we have been having activities over the last 2 weeks all over the country. We had a walk for water, environment, and climate change taking 450 kilometers from Kampala through eastern Uganda to Lira. It ended yesterday. And the whole idea was really to mobilize stakeholders along the way, whether it is government agencies, civil society, cultural institutions, religious institutions, private sector, the ordinary people, to get to know that these resources are for us all to look after, so that they can provide the services now and in the future. And this work really has created a lot of awareness, but it's not enough. We need to continue sensitization of the masses and the people so that they take responsibility. For example, if people are damaging pipelines and yet they know that those pipelines are the ones that are delivering water to the people, clearly you see that people are not behaving in a responsible manner. But I also want to appeal to us Ugandans. Let's ensure that we enforce this. If somebody comes and destroys your pipeline, I think, through public pressure, you can actually force that big person that we are talking about to actually put things right. The other one is on national water vehicles running around and seeing leaking pipes. I must say that National Water has done a very good job. Of course, they cannot be in every location. So if you see that happening, I think there are toll lines, numbers which you can call so that the action can be taken. Then on climate change, I think, construction of dams, I think we are doing quite a lot. It's one of the big programs we are having. We are constructing valley tanks and dams, but we are still very far. Right now, our storage capacity is still very low, but as a ministry, we are giving priority to creating that storage. And on climate change, the issue of plastics, bottles, yes, a big menace. When it rains in Kampala, you see flooding happening just because drainage channels are blocked. So we need to do a lot to get away from the plastics that are causing damage, but also to ensure that these plastics can actually be turned into waste. And I'm happy that our colleague ambassador has already been talking about what they are doing to make sure that we get waste out of this waste. Thank you very much.
Most welcome. Majoni, what is your opinion on the callers' concerns?
Of course, callers' concerns are spot on, and Mr. Kalista has really ably talked about this, especially concerning Henry Waguma, who has really talked about giving attention to environmental issues. It deserves, because the issue with environmental issues is that once they change, regaining them again, it takes time. For instance, if you degrade the wetland, to be restored also, it is a gradual process. And the same, of course, goes into weather and climate parameters. If, say, temperature changes from, say, 27 degrees Celsius on average to 30 degrees Celsius on average, to reduce it really further to 27, it is a long process. So it is important, it's high time that government really gives attention to all these issues concerning environment.
Okay.
Yeah, he talked about, of course, climate change. For sure, issues of plastics a menace, and nowadays we are talking of zero waste. It's good ambassador is here, so that whenever you get all these plastics, then you can turn them into something else, which is quite important. But of course, these plastics also tend to have really far-reaching impacts, especially when it rains in urban areas. They clog these water channels, and of course resulting into flooding and so on. And some time back they used to tell us that water from Nachivubo going to Lake Victoria would take around 2 weeks. But because of the degradation of wetlands, now it would take almost a day, and you find it already there. But of course those 2 weeks, that means now they were being infiltrated, and those bad issues that could be there, all of them were handled along the way. I beg to submit. Thank you.
Jibril?
Yes.
Baguma says, is it possible to have trees in every home?
It is very possible if it is emphasized. First of all, I can give you an example that for almost 20 years back, we have been seeing various poverty alleviating programs being launched. But again, this is like a warning signal that we cannot fight poverty when the environment is neglected. So that's why with this Mr. calling from Mr. Waguma Henry talking about involvement of environment sector into other programs, that's what we talked about as in sharing responsibilities with other government agencies, producing and supporting various initiatives on environmental protection. I can give him hope that in the Uganda forestry policy that is being reviewed, we emphasized the issue of supporting forest on private lands, because the farmers are the person now owning forests. We supported the issue of commercial forestry programs as well as collaborative forestry management. This was highly emphasized, and we are sure that the next forestry policy will be benefiting and guiding them, their implementation. Right. Either way, let's all own responsibilities, as I've talked about.
Okay.
Before you keep clapping hands waiting it to rain, when you have used the plastic, take responsibility of collecting them in one place.
All right.
If you visit areas like Kasese, Kanungu, where we have established plastic collection sites, each kilogram is at 500 from communities.
Okay.
As we also work hand in hand with government agencies to have total implementation of the National Environmental Act guidelines.
Okay,
because all these are done and they are not sustainable.
All right.
Thank you.
We're in the second hour of Ground Zero edition, and in this hour we tend to rush. If you can utilize the time that we have remained with to exhaust our topic. You will reach us on 776-511-426 is the number you can call and join this conversation. We have Doctor online. Hello.
Hello.
You're live on BC.
Thank you.
My name, and we are talking about water and environment for peace and socio-economic transformation of Uganda.
Thank you. That's a very good topic.
If you use a minute to introduce yourself and greet our dear listeners, Doctor.
Well, I'm Silva Mugisha, and I'm the Managing Director of National Water and Sewage Corporation. I'm happy to be here.
It is a privilege to have you also. Ugandans have raised concerns about the National Water and Sewerage Corporation. It is a privilege that we have you to answer such questions. Ugandans are saying that water is becoming expensive day by day, and yet we have plenty of water bodies in Uganda. What is your opinion on that, Doctor?
It might be true that water is expensive day by day, especially in those areas where national water has not yet reached. If a place has no piped water, and yet the people need water, it means somebody will go to the national water system, get water and bring it to the people where there is no water and sell it very expensively. So in that respect, I agree. But in the respect of the tariff of national water, I want to inform our listeners that the price of water on a public stand post, according to national water, is 25 shillings. That is 25 shillings per jerrycan of water. Now, for the industries, the price of water is 58 shillings per jerrycan. And then for domestic, those people who have water in their houses, the price of water is 83 shillings per jerrycan. And all this includes VAT, it includes service charges. And then for the schools, which operate on a commercial basis, the price of water is 84 shillings per jerrycan. So clearly, I don't think Ugandans will agree with me that there are very few commodities which are cheaper than water. Can you imagine a jerrycan of water at 25 shillings? It means mineral water, which is 1,000 shillings, is equivalent to 40 jerrycans of water. So clearly, water is not expensive. We only have a duty as a national water and as Ministry of Water to make sure that water reaches where it is not, so that those people who cheat others by getting water cheaply from national water and selling it expensively we can get a solution for that.
All right. Some people don't have water and they have been applying and visiting your offices all over the country, but there are no meters and no new connections because you say there are no resources.
No, that was a problem in the past, especially in the middle of COVID, when we had challenges of importing meters. But I would like to inform our esteemed customers that now we have sufficient meters. We sometimes get a few hiccups with supply of materials, but we are now good to go. So whoever has applied for water will get it very soon.
All right.
Because we now have stable supply of meters.
Doctor, how have you promoted the sound management and sustainable utilization of water for the betterment of the people of Uganda?
Well, first of all, the management of water follows the same principles like the management of any business that wants to operate at a financial and commercially viable manner. We are very cognizant. First of all, we have a plan of action, a 3-year plan called the corporate plan that stipulates the targets we want to achieve and how we want to achieve them. And also, we are very mindful of cost. We are cost-conscious people. Our strategy is to spend more on development expenditure and less on consumption expenditure. And our target is also to grow the business. For example, in the next 5 years, from now up to 2025, 2026, we want to make sure that our customers are happier, Currently, the customer satisfaction index for national water is 85%. We want to increase this to 90%. Now, our connections, we have 800,000 connections serving about 16 million Ugandans. We want to increase these connections to 1.2 million in the next 5 years, and we'll be able to serve over 25 million Ugandans. Now, when we do all this, our net asset worth, rather our total asset worth will increase from about 3.8 trillion now to about 6 trillion. So clearly, we are looking at growth of national water, and we want to do all this in a commercially and financially viable manner. So once you are focused, once you have a vision, and once you have staff who are properly engaged, there's no way you can fail to run a business in a sound and financial viable manner.
Dr. Silva, are you not concerned about the plastic disposal in Kampala and major towns, which block the water channels and people at the end of the day drink dirty water?
Well, I think the issue you are raising is pertinent. You are not framing it properly though, because whether those plastics block the channels or what, there is no way national water will ever supply dirty water, because we treat our water and make sure that it is properly treated before we give it to the people. Now, but the issue you are raising of plastic bottles and the polythene bags generally is a serious environmental protection issue. I heard Dr. Kalist yesterday explaining it on TV. When you have these plastic bottles, when you have these plastic bags, they stop the infiltration of water, they block water and cause floods. So there are serious consequences as a result of these plastic bottles.
Do you have any plans for that?
We are not directly in charge of that. There are other agencies who are in charge of that. You have the KCCA, for example, here in Kampala.
Okay.
You have the local governments, the local government authorities. You have NEMA. Ours is supplying of water and sewerage services, and we do that in coordination with other agencies who are directly in charge of the problem we are talking about.
All right. Before I let you go, Doctor, what gives you confidence that you're doing a great job, that the people of Uganda ought to trust you and believe in you as National Water and Sewerage Corporation?
First of all, the vision of National Water is to be a leading customer-centered utility in the world. And we have lived our vision. I cannot say we are the best, but we are moving towards that. You have clearly seen that we have a strategy for achieving the vision. We have very clear values. Our mantra is water for all, by a delighted workforce for a delighted customer. And we have very serious values that define the way we do our work. We work with the team spirit. We are result-oriented. We aim at excellent services, professionalism. So clearly, you can see that when you look at the frame of our plan, our customers should best be assured that we are up to the job, and there is no way we can disappoint them.
All right. Your last word to the people of Uganda?
My last word is that we are all prepared as a National Water, as a ministry, to ensure that we deal with all the challenges we might have in the water and sanitation sector, to see how we can serve our Ugandans better and also contribute to the national development of this country.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Any people of Uganda on International Water Day?
Any what, sorry?
Any gifts?
The gift we are giving them is better services.
All right.
We are going to try to make sure they get better services. Thank you very much.
Greetings to the people of National Water and Sewerage Corporation.
And greetings to my colleagues in the studio.
All right. Silva Mujisha is Managing Director, National Water and Sewerage cooperation, raising issues, and also addressing people's concerns. If I may start with you, Jim, you've heard from the managing director, the commissioner, and from the meteorological center. Most of our water bodies and other resources, by the way, have been sold. Others are renting, if I may use that word, for the better lack of a better word. For us, are we the same issue also on our water bodies? As an environmentalist, are you not concerned? In the and now being managed by the Egyptians. What is your comment on that, Jipri?
And this we can consider environmental patriotism. We may have a lot of things changing. You cannot be here for, let's say, I come from Uganda, Nyamarebe, that end very deep in the village, and you are growing eucalyptus in swamps. You are drawing the available water sources, these which are above the first impervious rock. Then asking National Water and Sewage Corporation to come provide the water deeply in those villages. This area like Churuhula, it is very dry, regardless of it being a cattle corridor. Now, here that the practices being done as communities, they are not favorable. Then it's all about you gaining a sense of patriotism, and in the name of environmental justice, you start promoting other means which are good. You are river being managed by, as far as policies are concerned, I can say that it's again as government agencies that now what can we do sustainably to manage our resources very well. If this is addressed, we shall achieve everything.
All right.
Yes.
Commissioner, our water body is safe?
Thank you very much, Moderator. I want to clarify on the two issues you have raised. Our water bodies are safe, but I will of course put a rider to that. Let me start with the issue you have said that our water bodies have been sold. The Ministry of Water and Environment is responsible for all the water resources of the country, and these water resources are actually owned by government on behalf of Ugandans, and as the Ministry of Water and Environment, it's our work. Now, what the challenge you have been having is that some people encroach on water bodies by powering in soil to extend the land that they have. But nobody has solved this. What they are doing is illegal, and you must have been seeing those culprits actually arrested and stopped. I think in the media it has been clear. I don't want to mention names. So it's not that the water bodies have been sold. It's just that individuals, selfish individuals, are trying to extend their land into water bodies by powering in soil. We have protection zones around water bodies, which need to be respected, but people are not respecting them. So what we have started doing as a ministry is to demarcate those protection zones and plant pillars, so that whoever goes beyond that pillar knows, the way UNRWA, for example, is doing with road reserves. So I want to tell Ugandans and those who are listening that water bodies have not been sold. Whoever is trying to extend into water bodies is doing it illegally, and when you see them, report to us as the Ministry of Water and Environment, and there are various agencies, of course, cinema, even the local governments, and ordinary Ugandans, as Ambassador has mentioned. These are our resources. We have to have a sense of patriotism.
Commissioner,
yes.
There is a lot of processed water on the market. How safe are Ugandans? Have you considered that as a Ministry of Water and Environment?
Yes, actually one of the things I do as the head of department is to license all of those that are abstracting water. The law says whoever is using water and is pumping it has to get a permission. For example, if you are bottling mineral water, before Uganda National Bureau of Standards licenses you, you have to come and get a permit from us. We call it a groundwater abstraction permit. But there are those who are not abstracting, they are only processing. They just get water from a tap, say from National Water, and they process it and they start selling on the market. Those ones are licensed by the National Bureau, or the Uganda National Bureau of Standards directly. But our team, we have a department for water quality management, which always goes around to test the quality, including those on the market, working with UNBS. And once we find that the quality is poor, those are the companies you always hear that UNBS has actually closed and they had removed them from the market. But Ugandans a number of Ugandans are really crafty. Sometimes you stop them here, they pass through another angle, and that's why we are calling upon everybody to be vigilant and be patriotic. If that water doesn't have a UNBS mark, then you know that that water shouldn't actually be consumed.
Water in Uganda is a major source of energy, and talking about hydroelectricity, and the water levels seem to be reducing every day. Are you not concerned as the Ministry of Water and Environment that anytime sooner Uganda might be at risk of shortage of power?
Yes, thank you very much. Maybe let's start with the Nile state. The Nile starts in Uganda and is being managed by Egyptians. No, the Egyptians are not managing the Nile. Actually, we manage it as Uganda. Now, how do we manage it? All the water that flows into the Nile comes from Lake Victoria and goes through the dams at Jinja, Naruba and Kira. So at Jinja, you more or less like have a tap. So what we do as the Ministry of Water and Environment, we regulate the flow of water from Lake Victoria on a daily basis. We instruct Ministry of Energy and its agencies, ESCOM, Uganda Generation Company, and the Bujagari Energy, on how much water they have to release. And every 10 days, they send us information on how much they are releasing. If they go beyond what we have licensed them to do, we actually stop them. And I must say that they are doing very well because they know we are very serious. So we are actually managing it. But this water goes to Egypt through South Sudan and Sudan. So Egypt, by its nature, it's a desert. So it is interested in what we are doing. So they have a mission in Uganda, which normally always wants to know whether what is being released at Jinja is actually in line with what we have agreed. But we are the ones managing it. But we manage that water and release that water for hydropower generation. We have a cascade of dams, a number of dams on the Nile, and all of them are actually regulated by us. Right now, the Lake Victoria levels have actually been high. The highest level was reached on 19th May last year, and it reached the highest ever we have ever reached, 13.5 meters. We had never gone to that level. We had only gone to 13.11, but at that level, we had gone to 13.41, sorry. And at that level, the level was already very high. But last year, we reached the highest level ever. So the levels are now going down, but they are higher than what they should be. So what we do as a ministry, when the levels go higher, we release more water. When we allow more water to be released. When the levels go lower, we reduce. So that's how we manage. We have what we call an agreed curve. We know how much water we should release at a certain level. So we are really managing it. But of course, the interesting bit is when you destroy the environment, you destroy wetlands within Uganda, within Kenya, within Tanzania, within Burundi and Rwanda, then the amount of water available reduces. Sometimes you have too much water in the rainy season, too little water in the dry season. And the dry season certainly will have challenge with hydropower generation. That's why for us, protecting the environment is one of the strategies for actually ensuring water availability. And right now, we have developed a policy where every water user, every water infrastructure has to protect the area. We call it a catchment. And they have put up 3% of their investments. It's our licensing requirement. Thank you.
Mjuni, farmers in Africa, and to be specific in Uganda, had technology or the knowledge to predict the weather and seasons, but they went to plant and went to harvest. But the story has now changed. In the season where they were planting is the same season they are harvesting. What went wrong?
Thank you, moderator. Maybe before I tackle this one, let me add on what Karisti said concerning the catchment area. Of course, Lake Victoria, it collects water from its neighboring catchment areas, and therefore, if they are protected and they are able to have enough rainfall, then that means we shall have this water sustainably maintained at certain levels here in Lake Victoria. And of course, maybe one thing really I wanted to talk about was about the level of contamination of water, especially here in Uganda, as a result of plastics and other processes that really contaminate our water. And I believe maybe the cost of treatment can as well be high, and we believe really it is high time really we started looking at those issues. And of course, the level of pollutants and particulate materials in the atmosphere, all these, whenever it rains, of course, they all come back to the Earth's surface, and they end up, of course, into our water resources, and therefore that means even the cost of treatment can as well be high. Back to your question on indigenous knowledge and of course scientific climate focus. I must say, people who have lived with the environment understand it better than any other person. And of course, people used to have indicators that they would use to predict, and of course they were able to know that the rains are coming, and they would really start planting, and they would harvest, and so on. Of course, some of the things like, direction of the winds, they tend to be meteorological, but they are limited in scope. But the others, for instance, some kind of crops and so on, they use it to use as indicators, and they would be able to tell that probably if the coffee tree or some other plants have flowered, they can tell that it is about to rain. But in the face of climate change, some of these indicators have almost, they are no longer there, and therefore people are facing it rough, really to predict. And of course, with these changes, it becomes difficult for them, and even we have tried really to document indigenous knowledge on how these people have been predicting, especially the cultivators, the pastoralists. All these people tend to have different ways of predicting the weather.
But even you who have the advanced technology and machines, it seems it has been so much difficult to predict weather nowadays. As we have, you sometimes tell us, not you, or some stations, TV stations tell us it is going to rain heavily, and at the end of the day we have too much drought. Is this the reason why even some TV stations stopped the weather prediction programs?
Well, I first of all thank UBC, at least for them. They maintained really our forecasts, and I really don't know whether our people have been following these forecasts. Quite often they are spot on. We have different forecasts. Of course, some are short range in nature, and others are long term in nature. So for short range, the accuracy is as good as more than 90%. And for instance, if you are predicting weather for the next hour, it is much easier, because by that time weather changes will be minimal. But when you are predicting, say, for next month or for the next 4 months or for next season, maybe in climate projections, then some of the variables tend to change over time. But what have we done? Government has really invested a lot in terms of weather and climate services. For instance, we recently acquired 3 weather radar systems, and as we talk now, really these 3 radar systems, they have really helped us to make sure that we improve on our weather prediction. And if you have been following for some time, Bwana Moderator, you would see really we've improved over time. And of course, it comes with also skilling the manpower. It doesn't come all of course because we have got these models, and you must train these personnel on how to run these models and so on. But I must say, with the forecasting, it's like playing darts. The closer you are to the bull's eye, then you can easily hit it. And if you go very far, like in climate projections, then you tend to reduce. But we try our level best to make sure that the forecasts are available. And if there are changes, what is important is that we communicate the changes. If there are, for instance, like this season, we've got tropical cyclones that diverted the moisture, and therefore it is important that people get to understand after that tropical cyclone having landfall in Mozambique, then we expect moisture rate to come again, and then we resume our rainfall. So that is the most important we should communicate. So as I conclude on this point is that in the face of climate change, some of these parameters are no more, so people are facing it quite often in terms of indigenous knowledge, and therefore that's when scientific climate forecast becomes handy to be used, and we try our level best to maintain this kind of information, because we have different products on a daily basis, monthly, seasonal, and even climate projections, and all these they help our farmers in taking decisions.
All right. Jibril,
Yes.
we've been talking about the encroachment on forests, encroachment on river banks, and other important sites on the environment. As an environment, what are those strategies that you've put to protect the environment?
First of all, we came up with sensitization basically to enhance the movement. Community sensitization, information delivery is the best way to go. I can give you an example. For example, we are on Riverizi, where we are growing bamboo with an expectation of 100 meters out of the what? From the river source. Communities used to come and own this land, grow eucalyptus, which is a water-sucking tree, and at the end you find the water levels in the river decreasing, the water pressure decreasing. So, apart from the siding communities, as well as actively involving them with the various government agencies, to achieve these activities, we shall add a positive impact on water as far as water replenishment is concerned. When we say plastics out of water sources, we are doing this, and it is also helping as far as water replenishment is concerned. We are involving various stakeholders. I can say thank you, Kingdom of Tolo. As far as the River Mpanga is concerned, we are entering into a relationship of stretching bamboo growing up from Renzo up, then down here, up to Chegegwa, Buhweju ends. This is another way of preserving our water sources by helping one another to identify is all our responsibilities.
Okay.
I can say thank you government agencies like NFA. They have worked tirelessly to establish as far as nursery beds countrywide. But we again come up with added efforts. If we say, NEMA, your role is not only for plastics. Come and support this program of tree conservation. Come up as fast as possible. We have joint efforts to sustainably achieve our missions.
All right.
Then as the Million Trees International Organization, we continue establishing our boundaries in all East African countries, involving stakeholders, since the earth is one, and we have to protect
All
it
right.
as community.
Thank you. Ground Zero takes a very short break, and I will get some of your calls as we wrap up this program, and we are coming back in a bit. We pray you don't go away.
Season 2. Stay tuned. We shall be right back. It's hot.
We passed it. We didn't know exactly what the problem was on the ground. There is no pretending about the effect of this thing. There's no pretending about it. Nobody should. It's a problem.
It's balanced.
This is not the stage at which you start planning to tax a commodity like coffee, especially from down there.
It's intellectually engaging.
The Constitution provides that the land must be registered under the customer tenure system, which is one of those that's recognized by the Constitution.
Ground Zero Season 2, live and syndicated on your public and national broadcaster, UBC, inspiring Uganda. Welcome back. Ground Zero Season 2 continues.
8 FM UBC Radio. It is the time that you call us on 776-511-426.
Yes, I'm on in my summary, Juma. Yes, I don't know. The government have failed to identify who is the responsible or who is supposed to stay within the swamp area, because encroachment at the swamp areas, government take highly steps against the local people. But when you see these investors, the Chinese, the Indians, and a few to mention, they are there simple. It's like big is big. So let it be categorically. Yes. Of the constructing a good drainage system which may accumulate them into one beach and dispose it of maybe by sucking it using a vehicle like this one of Tanka Busa. Okay? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Davahaj.
All right. This is UBC Ground Zero, broadcasting live on 98 FM. We are on 98 FM. And for the concluding remarks, as our time is first spent, starting with Jibril.
Yes. We continue requesting communities to take the responsibilities. Then government agencies, as well as the local community groups, CBOs, NGOs, we to sustainably add our efforts. And partner Jubril Owomujisha Semakura, who is the chairman Greening Uganda campaign and the overall environment ambassador across East African region. That's why I say that we are working ahead, involving all government agencies in Kenya, Tanzania, in the formulation of what we call an environmental body that will be sitting at ESC for sustainable implementation of government policies, environmental policies, in all sister countries in East African region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator. Of course, the Uganda National Meteorological Authority, UNMA, will continue to provide weather and climate information to different stakeholders for planning and decision making. Maybe what I can say is that weather can impact positively and negatively. If it impacts positively, how do you harness the opportunities that normally come with that kind of weather? And if it impacts negatively, how do you guard against the risks associated with that negative weather? And therefore, that's why we are talking about early warning, early action as the theme for this year World Meteorological Day. And the Uganda National Meteorological Authority will celebrate it, of course, in Mbarara on 23rd, and therefore inviting people really to come and be with us. And of course, we shall also be with our Mother Ministry for all other activities.
Thank you very much, moderator. I want to thank the listeners
and wetlands.
Thank you very much, moderator. Let me respond to this. First of all, wetlands are not supposed to be settled in, but of course we do activities which are environmentally friendly. So right now, His Excellency the President has given a directive that nobody should go in a wetland. We know, for example, doesn't issue EIS certificates in wetlands. He has also said that nobody should grow rice in wetlands. We all activities that are environmentally friendly, after a thorough environment assessment. So we are not focusing on investors and giving them a leeway. We want everybody to know that wetlands are important. They are stores of water. They keep our nature, and also they should be protected.
All right.
As I want all issues we have talked about can only be addressed through a partnership between the civil society, religious institutions, cultural institutions, and the people. And that's what started fighting the Uganda Environment Week to give us stakeholders to contribute. So, with this agenda, I might understand the Uganda Kingdom. We have Kingdom. We are trying. We board Uganda Joint Christian Council. As I speak today, the three Christian Council have issued a pastoral letter, and they have declared environment. They are also going to be part of the Uganda Water and Environment Week that opens tomorrow at 2 p.m. and will be telecast live on UBC and NBS. And I want to call upon Ugandans to come forward and join us so that they can be part of identifying the challenges we have, finding solutions so that we can have water and environment contributing to peace and socio-economic transformation of the country.
In the Ambassador, I want so until now that we have reached the end of Ground Zero Season 2. We've been broadcasting live on 98 FM UBC Radio and also UBC Utebo, Western Isle FM and Magic 1 on 100 FM. This repeat, there is a very program tomorrow on Sunday at 3 p.m. You may create time for that. Don't miss On the Journey, which is the next program by George Ngobi and other vital programs on Vutebo, West Nile and Magic 1 on 100 FM. And please be part of the activities that are taking place in the country to preserve and protect our environment and water. Remember, water is life. From all of us at UBC, we wish you all the best, and we are because you are. We keep inspiring Uganda. For God and my country, Ampere Amon Utega, I sign out.
That was Ground Zero Season 2, a production of Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, UBC, inspiring Uganda. It's hot.
We passed it. We did it.